Good morning. It is Monday, March 4th, 2024. I'm Thomas Caldwell of the Aurelian Column, and this is the Monday Morning Report. Election 24 will soon begin in earnest. Tomorrow is an election day, known as Super Tuesday here in the United States. Presidential primaries to decide on who will be nominated for their respective parties to run for president will be held in many states, all on the same day. The states that will be voting on Tuesday, March 5th, will be Alabama, Alaska, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Maine, Massachusetts, Minnesota, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Vermont, and Virginia. American Samoa, I'm told, is also going to be holding a primary that day. Now, given the way things have gone, it's a virtual certainty Donald Trump will win in most, if not all, of those states, and will then have enough delegates going to the Republican convention this summer to be formally nominated to run for president. But after Tuesday, the presidential election will be entering its real phase because effectively he's the nominee at that point. Now, whomever the Democrats eventually decide to nominate, that remains to be seen. I really don't think it's going to be Joe Biden. The man really is past any ability to really do much, and that's even coming from the Democratic side. I'm pretty sure it's not going to be him that Trump will be running against. Who? Well, that will be interesting to find out. Now, all that aside, the establishment in the United States, the deep state, whatever you want to call it, is doing and will continue to do everything in their power to keep Donald Trump out of the White House. Everybody is seeing this. Okay, this is not happening in a vacuum. Anybody with eyes and a reasonable level of intelligence sees what's going on. Although the people in power, well, what we're seeing is something I remember out of a book called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's when somebody puts a towel over their head and has the belief that if they can't see anybody, nobody can see them. Well, I have some news for them that a lot of people have figured out what's going on here. The American people are getting a very rude awakening that they are no longer in charge of their own affairs, at least as much as they thought they were. And this is causing a great deal of anger throughout the country. Not in the cities, as much as you might think, but around the country, people are pretty angry, and they're pretty upset, and they're infuriated. And how this will affect things remains to be seen, but the mask is off, and it's been off for a while. Whenever this happens in history, people tend to rebel, not necessarily violently, but in ways you don't expect. Now, all this is said and done, there is a book that I finished reading, and I think it's one of the most important books that's been written in many years. It's called Mao's America by a woman named Xi Van Fleet. Okay, she's a naturalized American citizen from China who survived the Cultural Revolution in that country that occurred from 1966 to 1976 and arguably is one of the greatest cases of mass insanity in human history. And she has outlined brilliantly exactly what's going on in this country, which is right out of that playbook. Everything from all the what bathroom to use to political correctness to white people being told that they're racist because they're born that way. All of this insanity is basically just a reformulation of what the Chinese did to themselves. The Chinese leadership did to their country for power and control. I think this book could be the spark that sets off a fire of revolt in this country where it does get taken back by the people who should be running things, which is namely we the people of the United States. I urge you to get that book. You can get it in hardcover, softcover, electronic book format, and audio book format. I would recommend it highly. In fact, I'd urge everybody to read it. It could have the same effect on what's going on now and what will go on that Uncle Tom's Cabin had on the Civil War. It's that good. Now, on to international affairs. The There's a lot of things going on in the world as usual, but it all boils down to two locations. One is Ukraine and the other is Israel and Gaza. Now, the Ukrainian situation is getting even more dangerous than one would have thought it would go a few months ago. You have people talking about war with Russia. You have Russia talking about use of nuclear weapons if it's attacked. This is all quite insane. And it's hard to believe that the people in charge of these various countries, Macron of France is one fellow who I think is crazy. It's really hard to follow this and try to keep from going crazy yourself. But whoever gets elected president in November could find themselves in a position of either stopping a war or trying to prevent one from happening. Because rhetoric is always a way that you can cause miscalculations at the political level, and miscalculations at the political level often lead to miscalculations at the military level. All you need is one person making a mistake someplace, pressing a button they shouldn't press, or firing something they shouldn't fire, and it can blow right up. Now, that's the situation with Ukraine, the situation in Gaza, which is basically Israel continuing to pound that little piece of territory to dust, along with many of the people living there. Again, all the Arab countries around there, in spite of their rhetoric, are not going to do anything. At least it looks that way. The U.S. dropped 40,000 food packs on Gaza the other day. Well, that's interesting. There's about 2 million or more people there. That's not really much. It would be interesting to learn who arranged for that airdrop, what commercial enterprise provided the food in that airdrop, and how much it cost. It would be interesting to see that. And how much the U.S. taxpayer paid for it, or I should say the Chinese creditors the U.S. continues to borrow money from. So here's some things to watch. First off, watch what Turkey does, the country of Turkey. Now, Turkey's a member of NATO. It has also changed politically over the last couple of decades. It's no longer as pro-Western as it once was, and it is pretty angry at what's going on. It has a massive military that's very, very high-end, and if they chose to march through Lebanon and into Israel, they could do it, and that would really exacerbate the situation. It's become a foregone conclusion that Israel's influence in Washington pretty much gets what it wants out of the people in power. My understanding through some of my connections is there's some pushback on that. Traditionally, the U.S. would be able to rein in Israel if it was determined that needed to be done. That isn't happening anymore. The voices of reason are being drowned out by rhetoric of people that are driven by hatred, to use the H word. And this is what we're seeing in Ukraine. This is what we're seeing in the Gaza-Israeli conflict. Now, here are some ideas of what you can do about this situation in the Middle East and in Ukraine. On many times in this show, I've talked about how to work the U.S. government. One of the things you can do if you're interested in foreign policy is to contact members of the U.S. Senate. Every state has 2 senators. So if you're an American citizen listening to me, there are 2 senators at your beck and call, at least theoretically. The Senate has a lot of influence over the State Department. Now, I would do this. I would contact either by email, by phone, or by letter. Letter has a big impact when you send it to a member of Congress. And say, Senator, I would like to ask you 2 questions. 1, do you wish to see a third world war? And 2, if not, what are you doing to help prevent it? Just those 2 questions. And see what your response is going to be. I still think there's far more sanity in the United States than we give it credit for. And if you put that question to your senators, they're going to think about it, or at least their staff will. Put them on the spot. And if you get a written response, which you should, hold on to it. Publish it. Because at the end of the day, a lot of people are asleep at the wheel in Washington, and this might be a way to wake them up. Nobody sane wants a war, wants a large war, wants a massive war, unless, of course, you're manufacturing weapons or financing the weapons. Those are the people that usually want wars. But contact your members of Congress, not the representatives. They're not really a part of this particular scenario. Contact your 2 senators and ask them those 2 questions and see what response you get. That being said, there is a lot more going on in the United States right now. I've noticed from some reports people have gotten to me that gasoline is going up in price. Well, that's something that happens, goes up and down. I'm not really an expert at the petroleum market, but it is interesting to see that. It is continuing to be a very interesting year. And if you are voting tomorrow, good luck. If you're in the states I mentioned earlier, remember that power belongs to those who show up. That's all for today. If you like what you hear, please subscribe. And if you really like what you hear, please consider a paid subscription. Share this publication, share this audio, and share what I write with other people. I like feedback. If you want to reach me, you can reach me at feedback, one word, feedback@aureliancolumn.com. That's feedback@aureliancolumn.com. You can also reach me up on Twitter, which is also known as X. Don't think anyone's really figured out how to describe that. My handle there is MICCAMPEN, MICCAMPEN. Anyway, in the week ahead, be good, be safe, be vigilant, and good day.